In this next episode of our Promised Land series, we follow David's footsteps as he fled from King Saul in the wilderness of En Gedi, discovering how the wild side of the Promised Land inspired him and can inspire us today. Somewhere near here, a young King David fled for his life from King Saul. But King Saul was not the only thing to be feared out here. Although the Promised Land was a land flowing with milk and honey, the wilderness was not necessarily a welcoming environment to hide. And it would have kept King David on high alert. But it was here in the oasis of En Gedi that King David refused to give in to fear. While hiding in its caves and finding refreshment from its streams, David discovered profound inspiration here, and his most powerful weapon was always his trust in God. Today, I invite you to join me in the footsteps of King David to experience the wilderness he was so familiar with. Together, let's discover the inspiration he drew from the Promised Land and hopefully come away with refreshing inspiration for our own lives today. Having courageously entered and settled the Promised Land under the leadership of Joshua, the land was divided up among the tribes of Israel. It was at this point in history that the Jewish people truly put their roots down here, and the covenant God made with Abraham and his descendants was fulfilled. His descendants were now a nation with a specific land. The Bible is full of stories revolving around the land of Israel. It was the stage for so many meaningful and world-changing events, and it remains center stage. But one thing that has always intrigued me is how even the nature found in the Promised Land has impacted so much of the Bible. So, as Isaac and I continued our trek around the entire country of Israel, we stopped at one of my favorite sites to learn a bit more about how the landscape and the creatures in the Promised Land inspired the authors of the Bible. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the desert. Isaac, we're still here in the Judean desert. Tell me where we are exactly right now.
So right now we are at the place called Ein Gedi, which is the biggest and one of the most impressive oases that we have right in the heart of the Judean desert.
And what does En Gedi mean?
Ein, in translation to English, means a spring of fresh water. Gedi means goat or a gazelle. So En Gedi means the spring of the goats or the spring of the gazelles.
All right, well that helps us to understand the name. We're in the Judean desert, so I'm going to make an assumption. You can tell me if I'm wrong or right, but are we still in the region of the tribe of Judah?
Absolutely, yes.
We are?
Yes,
okay.
we are.
All right. Now, since we've gotten here, we've seen a little bit of wildlife. We've seen some ibex that are wandering around here. And what other kind of wildlife do we have in this area today?
Now, we also have the irex, I-R-E-X. It looks like a stone rabbit. It is indigenous to the family of the elephants. I know it's quite difficult to believe, but please Google it. Now, in this area, we also have foxes and we have the caracal. Caracal is a wild cat. And a part of that, we have spiders and the most deadliest type of snake that we have in Israel, indigenous to here, the Ein Gedi viper. I wish we will not meet
Yeah, we'll watch for
the
those.
Ein Gedi viper today.
Okay, good. Okay, so that's today. Let's rewind all the way back to, say, the Old Testament. What sort of wildlife was here at that time?
Also, the ibexes. Ibex is mentioned in the Bible. Gazelles, irexes, definitely the leopards, mentioned quite a few times in the Bible, and lions. And the Bible also speaks about bears.
Okay, so we're back now in sort of that Old Testament period. From the Hebrew Bible, where is En Gedi mentioned? What's it known for?
Now, Ein Gedi is associated with two main stories.
Okay.
Number one, David and King Saul. Soon we go deep into the story. Number two, King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Number one, when Saul was so jealous at David and wanted to kill him, at some point David escaped to En Gedi. The Bible tells us that he came to live in the caves and in the strongholds of En Gedi. And then when Saul came here with 3,000 men, when they tried to find him, soon we go deep into the story. Another important story during the time of King Solomon. The Bible tells us about the Queen of Sheba. She came to visit him in Jerusalem, and she brought a lot of gifts to present to Solomon. One of the gifts was a very special type of tree called opus balsam or persimmon. Now, that was a very special type of tree, because in those days we know that from the branches and from the fruits of the tree, people knew how to make very special perfume. That was the most expensive type of perfume in the world in those days. That tree could grow only in hot places. En Gedi is a very hot place through most of the time of the year. So the Bible teaches us that Solomon established a farm here, and here he planted the persimmon trees. Here he had a big perfumes factory. So in the book of Song of Songs, we read about En Gedi as a beautiful place with vineyards and beautiful smell in the air.
Now, when David comes here, he's running away from Saul, who's chasing him down, trying to kill him. What would make David want to come and hide here?
Oh, David was very clever. First of all, remember, he was a professional shepherd. Now, David understood that if he wants to live, as we say, under the radar, best place to escape and to disappear is here in the desert. The desert is very big. You come here, no one can't find you. But condition number one for life is water. No water, no life. David knew about the spring of En Gedi. Remember, in those days and still nowadays, that spring provided and continues to provide a lot of fresh water through all year round. So David lived in one of the caves that we see here.
Okay.
So security, no one cannot find you. And always he moved from one place to the another. Number two, every time that he was thirsty, simply down to this canyon, where down there he had plenty of running water 24/7.
Yeah, I'm seeing below here just a line of green all the way out toward the Dead Sea. I assume because of the brown on either side that must be where the water runs, yes?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
The spring itself is on the top of the hill, which is
Right.
above us. From there, the water ran into this canyon and all the way down along this green line down to the Dead Sea.
So before David, do we have any record of Jewish presence here in the Judean desert? How long have the Jews been here?
At least since the 12th century BC,
Okay.
when this area became to be part of the territory of the tribe of Judah. Remember, since then, we know about Jewish presence all over the territory of the tribe of Judah.
Okay. So let's go back to David's story. He's being chased by Saul. What happened and what's going on there?
So, one day, when Saul heard that David was here in En Gedi, he took 3,000 men. Then they came here in order to do what? To try and to catch David and his men. And the Bible tells us that when they came here, Saul went into one of the caves. See how many caves we have here? Why? In the Bible it says, in order to relieve himself. In the back of the cave were David and his men. Saul did not see them. So the Bible tells us that while Saul was relieving himself, David came behind him and did what? It says that he cut the corner of his garment. And then when Saul went out, David came behind him and showed him what he did, which means David meant to say to King Saul, you see what I did? If I wanted, I could kill you, but there is more. Always there is more. In order to go deep into the story, we have to understand a little bit more about Judaism. Remember that nowadays, morning prayer, every Jewish man all around the world who prays, morning prayer must cover the head and the shoulders with the talit. What is a talit? What we call in Hebrew, in English, the prayer shawl. Now, the prayer shawl is black and white or blue and white. Along bottom edge of the talit, we have 613 tassels. Why 613? This is the number of the commands that we have in the Torah, which means every morning prayer you pray, you wear the talit, you see the tassels. This reminds you the number of the commands that you have to follow and to obey in order to improve your chance to go to heaven.
Right.
Now, the talit has 4 corners. The corner is called tzitzit. This is the most important part of the talit. In Judaism, we say that the tzitzit, the corner, this is physically the connection between a Jewish man to God. So in the morning prayer, when you pray, if you want to feel physically that you are connected to God, what do? During the time of the prayer, you hold the tzitzit. You hold one of the corners. This is your connection to God. In Judaism, we say that when someone dies, one of the first things that we do is we cut the corner of his talit. Why? Because when you are dead, you are dead. You have no more connection to God. Now, if you go back to the time of the Bible, during the time of the Bible, people didn't have a t-shirt and a jeans. So in the Bible, we read about the garment. What is the garment? A big talit. Imagine to yourself a big talit like a poncho. There is a round hole right in the middle. So you wear it over your head. Half of this garment covers front of your body. Other half covers you from behind. And then you tie a rope around your waist to tighten it to your body. So at that time, this is what people used to wear, the garment, which means the talit. Now, David knew what he was doing. While King Saul was relieving himself on purpose, what did he do? He cut the corner of his garment in order to disconnect King Saul from God. By the way, in Judaism we say, worst thing that a Jewish man can do to another is to cut the corner of your friend's talit. Let me go even further. In Judaism, we say that at the end of age, it will be more easy for you if you murdered someone, but please do not cut the corner of his talit, which means it will be more easy for you if you killed someone, but please don't cut the corner of your friend's talit. Now, this is why on purpose David cut the corner of the garment of Saul. When he came out, he wanted to say to Saul, if I wanted, I could kill you, but in matter of fact, I'm talking to a dead man. From now on, you have no more connection to God. Indeed, shortly after that, Saul committed suicide.
Wow.
Now, my dear friend Jeff, where else we find stories about the corner of the garment? That bleeding woman, Capernaum.
Right. Yes.
She came behind him, touched the corner of his garment, her bleeding stopped. Or in Gennesaret, many sick people got healed when they touched the corner of Yeshua's garment.
Wow. Isaac, I've never heard that explained specifically in relation to this story. And I love your last line there. I'm looking at a dead man. It's a threatening kind of thing even, but thank you for that explanation. That's amazing. Well, Ein Gedi is a beautiful place. It's busy here today because we're here on Shabbat to tape, so lots of people are enjoying the springs and the waterfall and all of that. But thank you for the explanation. And I think that, you know, one of the things we're going to be talking about is how David took inspiration from nature all around him as he wrote the Psalms and the many things that he was involved in writing. And so it's beautiful and great to be able to be here. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. Don't go away. When we come back, we dive deeper into how the nature of the Promised Land inspired the Bible and can inspire our hearts today.
Israel is facing one of its most difficult challenges, but with your help, First Century Foundations is making a difference on the ground by supporting local charities like the Joseph Project.
First Century Foundations has been thrilled to be able to help with humanitarian aid items for the warehouse here. But a few months into the war, all of your stocks were depleted. Talk to us about how important it was to get this place restocked.
There's a big request for food all the time. People are without a house, without work, and they need this supply, they need this help. So your donations are great help. It's helping the Joseph Project to keep purchasing these items and making sure it's going to the right people in the land of Israel.
And we just want to remind you at home that your donations matter.
Call today with your gift of $30 or more. 1-877-628-2800.
It was so inspiring to explore Ein Gedi with Isaac. The wildlife that greeted us almost everywhere we walked was intriguing, and the caves that could be seen all around us made the Bible story of David's flight from Saul come to life. It is truly stunning just how much the landscape and the wildlife here in Israel fills the pages of God's Word and continues to inspire us today. Here in the wilderness of Ein Gedi, the hustle and bustle of the city is completely hushed, and silence is almost tangible except for the sound of the running water. Here the desert overwhelms you with awesome beauty and yet humbling fear. Although the desert landscape and refreshing oasis is breathtaking, it fills you with a sense of vulnerability and reverence for the potentially hazardous environment around you. But it is here, in many of the natural landscapes that fill the Promised Land, that so many incredible lessons can be learned by simply looking with wonder at God's creation all around. In fact, the Hebrew Bible is full of profound and important lessons drawn from nature. In Proverbs chapter 31, verses 24 to 31, the author uses nature around him to highlight just a few of the lessons we can learn by observing God's creation. Here's what he says. 4 things on earth are small, yet they are extremely wise. Ants are creatures of little strength, yet they store up their food in the summer. Hyraxes are creatures of little power, yet they make their home in the crags. Locusts have no king, yet they advance together in ranks. A lizard can be caught with the hand, yet it is found in kings' palaces. There are 3 things that are stately in their stride, and 4 that move with stately bearing. A lion, mighty among beasts who retreats before nothing. A strutting rooster, a he-goat, and a king secure against revolt. The nature that surrounded the authors of the Bible constantly inspired what they wrote. Perhaps the most poetic and romantic book of the Bible, Song of Solomon, draws inspiration from many different creatures, especially the beautiful gazelles that are seen everywhere in the Promised Land. In chapter 2, verses 16 and 17, he writes, "My beloved is mine, and I am his. He browses among the lilies. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle, or like a young stag on the rugged hills." God's creation is a powerful reflection of himself. By simply spending time in nature, observing it through a lens of faith in God, aspects of his nature can be observed. In fact, according to the Bible, God's creation so loudly speaks about him and even his invisible qualities that those who don't believe he exists have no excuse not to believe. Romans 1 verse 20 tells us, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. Although it is easy to overlook or ignore God's glory that is found in nature when we are surrounded by modern concrete jungles and our minds are glued to screens, creation is always nearby with endless messages about the Creator and his unfathomable power and wisdom. In fact, many times in the Bible, nature has incredible significance, even prophetic significance. When Jesus lived here in the Promised Land, he instructed his followers to learn from nature, specifically the fig tree, when he taught them about what would happen in the end times before his return. In Matthew 24, verses 32 and 35, we read, "Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. Truly, I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away." In the Bible, the fig tree is often an illustration of Israel. In this passage, the Greek word genea, translated as generation, is likely not as accurate as the Aramaic term Jesus used here, which was sharbtha. That literally means a race, a tribe, family, or nation, and on rare occasions it can be used to imply generation. This means that Jesus was promising that the nation of Israel would not pass away before his return. For over 2,000 years, people have tried to destroy the Jewish people, and Hitler perhaps became the closest to achieving this evil genocidal goal. But the promise of Jesus has stood firm that this chosen nation through which the Messiah came would not pass away until his return. And all the attempts at genocide for over 2,000 years have and will continue to fail. Now, more than ever, it is important to heed the words of Jesus, paying close attention to Israel. Although the fig tree is one of the very last trees to bud in the spring here in Israel, when the fig tree, or Israel, begins to come to life, as it truly did in 1948, we can be sure the end is near and the return of Jesus is imminent. God's creation has incredible significance, and the Bible is full of inspiration drawn from nature. The Bible tells us that when King Saul was in pursuit of David, David fled here to the wilderness of En Gedi to hide. And it was here, likely in the caves around this oasis, that David penned Psalm 57. "Have mercy on me, my God, have mercy on me, for in you I take refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster has passed. I cry out to God Most High, to God who vindicates me. He sends from heaven and saves me, rebuking those who hotly pursue me. God sends forth his love and his faithfulness. I am in the midst of lions. I am forced to dwell among ravenous beasts, men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens, and let your glory be over all the earth. They spread a net for my feet. I was bowed down in distress. They dug a pit in my path, but they have fallen into it themselves. My heart, O God, is steadfast. My heart is steadfast. I will sing and make music. Awake, my soul. Awake, harp and lyre. I will awaken at the dawn. I will praise you, Lord, among the nations, and I will sing of you from among the peoples. For great is your love, reaching to the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the skies. Be exalted, O God, above the heavens, and let your glory be over all the earth. David took refuge here in the caves of En Gedi, yet the caves only inspired him about where he was truly hidden. Because David was a shepherd for so much of his life to this point, he knew the dangers of the wild and had even killed wild animals with his bare hands. But his trust was not in his own strength alone. His trust was in God, and it was by declaring God's power in his own life that he felt strengthened and knew that God would ultimately protect him from Saul. It is also in the wilderness of En Gedi that David is said to have penned Psalm 63, verses 1 through 5. You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you, I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you, and I will praise you as long as I live. And in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you. David knew the potentially dangerous thirst that the dry desert heat quickly imposed. And here at the fresh waters of the oasis at En Gedi, David no doubt found refreshment and drew deep inspiration. He remembered his incredible encounters in God's presence, and he chose to worship knowing God would save and satisfy him. Do you feel as though you are in a dry desert today? Do you feel as though you're being pursued by evil? As though the dreaded wilderness is encroaching on your soul? It is sometimes during our darkest, most challenging times that God is able to reveal himself as our true refuge. It's in our moments of intense spiritual thirst that God is right there for us, just like an oasis. God is the water of life that refreshes us in the middle of the desert, no matter what we may face. In your moment of crisis, I pray that you will find inspiration in the wilderness as David did, being confident that you too will emerge by God's grace with a victory song and praise on your lips. Thank you for joining me today as we barely scratched the surface regarding just how much the Promised Land has inspired the authors of the Bible. Please join me again next week as we continue to explore the incredible significance of this Promised Land.
The nation of Israel is continuing to defend themselves against a rising tide of terror and anti-Semitism. However, Israel and the Jewish people are not alone. First Century Foundations has been actively supporting the people of Israel for nearly 40 years, providing food, clothing, and shelter for those in need, especially in these desperate times. When you give a gift of $30 or more, you are not only helping support the people of Israel, you are also showing that you care and are blessing God's chosen people in their hour of need. And when you give your gift, as a thank you, you will receive the bi-monthly newsletter and Israel Prayer Watch. And for monthly donations, we will send you the book, Praying for the Peace of Jerusalem. Call now, 1-877-628-2800, or visit us online at firstcenturyfoundations.com and help the people of Israel during these dangerous times.